Should there be female-only carriages on trains? Get your calls in for this one. 0207 862 2222 is that number again. Now, the number of violent attacks against women and girls on Britain's railways has gone up by 50% over the last 2 years, and the number of sexual offences has risen by 10%. Now, these are stats from the British Transport Police. This is already happening in other countries. In Egypt, 2 cars on metro trains are reserved for women only, but they can still freely ride in other cars. The policy was introduced to protect women from sexual harassment. In Japan, they have women-only carriages on the metro as well, and India also has train carriages just for women. But critics argue that the focus should be on tackling predators' behaviour rather than having zero-tolerance approach for abuse on public transport. But could single-sex carriages actually be a good idea? Albie, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's not a new idea for this country. I think women-only carriages were officially abolished in 1977 after being introduced in 1894, so they were around for almost 100 years. And I want to start off by saying that I do think violence against women and girls is absolutely appalling. Just this morning, my sister told me that she was driving on the way to work and a car full of white van men basically screamed out at her, asking her where she was going and saying that she was going the wrong way because it wasn't on the way to their house. It is awful. It is unacceptable. It needs to stop. I don't think the way that we stop it is by segregating men and women. I think the way that we stop it is by clamping down hard on people who break the law. As we've seen with the recent riots, I think they stopped because justice was served harshly and quickly. And if we were able to do that for more offences, perhaps people wouldn't behave so badly.
But when it comes to sexual offences, they can be quite hard to prosecute, can't they? And maybe that's where the difficulty comes in with this. What do you think about women-only carriages?
Well, I actually think they're a good idea. And look, they're an extra tool in the kit in terms of how we go about protecting women and girls. And we know that we need to, because we know that the reporting in terms of these offences are woefully low. It's accepted across the board. And we know that also in terms of prosecutions and the criminal justice system, again, we are failing women and girls in terms of pursuing that justice. So you make a good point there, I accept that. But what do we do today? How do we protect the teenagers? How would I have been protected? I have been assaulted on the train. I have intervened twice. How would we have been able to protect those people here and today? Well, we could have done that easily by giving those people, giving myself, the option of moving to a carriage where we knew that there would only be women there. And can I say, I would extend it to those who consider themselves to be in the vulnerable community, because we also know that those who identify in the LGBTQ+ community, they suffer extreme
But then
instances.
couldn't someone who wanted to be a sexual predator towards women pretend they were trans and go into a women-only coach?
And they absolutely could do that. And let's be clear, when we have these women-only coaches, there is no legal offence committed by a man for entering those carriages, for example,
So
in
how would it
Japan
be
or whatever.
enforced?
But we could do that here. We could absolutely say here that...
But if there is no legal requirement to stay away, if you're a male, to stay away from these women-only carriages, what good would that do?
Well, I'm saying if we introduced it here, absolutely we could do that. In the same way that there is a fine for if you pull the alarm when you shouldn't be pulling the alarm, absolutely there could be a fine imposed that if you are going into that carriage when you shouldn't be in that carriage at a particular time, etc. Absolutely. What we need is something in place now, because our women and our girls are being assaulted now. And whilst it's great that the British Transport Police, who of course exist throughout Scotland, England and Wales, so we're talking across the country here, whilst we are being told that there's going to be more police, whilst we're being told that there's going to be extra resources, what practically can be done?
But when we talk about practicality, and the reason I bring up the riots is because I do strongly believe the reason the riots stopped is because justice was served quickly and harshly. Why couldn't we apply that to other forms of bad behaviour?
I'm saying the opposite here. The reason why the riots stopped so quickly is because society as a whole came together and said enough was enough. And I accept that in this instance, because what we're talking about is an absolute epidemic, what we need is society to say enough is enough. We need to protect our women and girls. And by doing that, we can offer them safe spaces. We have the policies that have been introduced by British Transport Police. There's a text message number that you can utilise. There's an app that you can utilise. But we need practical solutions. We need them now. You know, Sadiq Khan was absolutely pilloried, wasn't he, for launching the adverts on London Underground. This was in London. Pilloried he was for saying that men should step in and become allies to women. Absolutely, that is what we need.
OK, we're going to go to the calls because we're getting lots and lots of calls coming in for this. Mandy from London, what's your thoughts on this? Women-only carriages, would you be happy with that?
Yes, particularly on... I actually live in Kent, and I need to travel on the southeast train lines. It's not their fault. However, the amount, particularly this weekend, it was so unsafe. We get bullied.
What do you mean unsafe? With drunk lady men?
With drunk men, and before this horrible weekend or the week, it's just normal on a Friday night, Saturday night, if there's football on, if you're a female on the train, if you're considered attractive in some of their eyes, they make lewd remarks when they're all in groups. And then if you're not the same colour as them, the language that they use. So we tend to try and stay within eyesight of each other. We keep quiet, which is sometimes very hard to do because it's not a fair fight.
Mandy, I've been on those sorts of trains before, and it is a very uncomfortable feeling. I wonder though whether, and we just learn to deal with it, don't we? We don't say very much, and we just keep our head down and we just get through.
Don't we? We're the ones who have to get up and leave.
But I do wonder actually whether Albie has a point here, and what Mandy's talking about is harassment and racism. Actually, yes. If they're bringing up a different, and so Mandy, those things should be reported and those things should be prosecuted swiftly, so that those individuals know, even after they've had a tin or two, they just cannot be doing that.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's what we need.
I don't want women or gay people or black people, and I'm both black and gay, by the way, to be segregated from everyday society, feel they are restricted from doing things that other people can do because other people are misbehaving. Those people should be dealt with quickly and harshly, and also society has to step in and say, no, this is not what we want in our country. I
just wonder with the courts and the backlogs the way they are, whether we actually have the capacity to take on the amount of cases that we would get if we were to crack down as harshly as perhaps we should. But Mandy, thank you for your call. And I also wonder whether women would still be able to go on all the other carriages. Yes. They would have the choice to go into a female-only space. Ian from North Ayrshire, do you think this would be a good idea?
This is bonkers.
Oh, okay.
Absolute bonkers.
Tell me why.
Now, but the emancipation of women and all the people that died in the race courses with the suffragettes.
Well, I think it was one woman, but yes.
Yeah, we've come a long way. We've got all this sort of equal rights, but we're going to push the ladies into a carriage, almost like we would put cattle into a separate carriage.
Ian, I hear how you've interpreted it, and I understand that interpretation being quite offensive for you. However, what it would be a space for women, like a women's only changing room, a swimming bath. It would be a space where women could opt to go that men weren't allowed to go, but they could still use the other carriages. For example, they could go on with their partners or their friends if they were travelling in a group and they felt safe enough to, or on their own if they felt safe enough to. It would be another option to keep them safe.
Could I offer a solution to this?
Please.
When I went into the chemist recently, and the lady behind the counter had a camera right on her chest, face to face with me, to record any abusive or insulting language.
Like police officers
do. The guard. Let me finish, please. Let me finish. Mm-hmm. The guard or whoever's on the train as an employee should have a camera, and they also should have a phone. And if there's bad behaviour there about men against women, you should instruct the driver to stop at the next station and phone the police of what's happened. And he's got a record of what offence has been committed on his camera.
And that would be brilliant if we had enough police officers and enough people on the trains. Unfortunately, there aren't that many members of staff on trains anymore, Ian. That's part of all the strikes as well. But thank you very much for your call and thinking outside the box for some other solutions. We need as many minds on this as possible, so thank you for getting involved. Trevor from Manchester, what's your thoughts of women-only carriages? Are they a silly idea?
No, they're not a silly idea. I think if women want a safe space, then they should have that safe space as an option. And lots of women do get along very well with men. Men get along very well with women.
Of course.
But sometimes they want their own space. They're happy if they're younger and they're frightened. They want to be with women that make them feel protected. And being a woman is a protected characteristic of the United Nations Code, and we should treat women in a respectful way.
Well, Trevor, if everybody treated women in a respectful way, I'm sure we wouldn't need women-only carriages. I suppose my concern about the women-only carriages situation would be, let's say you've got a later train, maybe a 11:30 train or a 12 o'clock train, so people are just coming back from the pub, and you've only got maybe one or two women in the carriage, and a predatory man could use that to their advantage if they know there's going to be a carriage where there isn't another man on there.
That is a possibility, but I think that's more a question of male behaviour than women's.
But isn't the whole thing a question of male behaviour rather than women's habits?
Yes, I agree. Men shouldn't be drinking that to excess.
And
it's very
Trevor,
hard to stop people doing that. I appreciate there's a lot of difficulty for a lot of people with alcohol.
Well, it's not, unfortunately, it's not just when they're drunk, but yes, I mean, that doesn't help the situation.
And also, Trevor, you're in Manchester. My mother's family are in Manchester. Quite often in Manchester, there are only 2 or 3 coach trains. Is it really practical for a train which has 2 coaches, or some trains are just literally 1 coach? How is it practical in those situations to have 1 coach for men and 1 coach for women, or half the coach for men and half the coach for women if there's just 1 coach or 2 coaches?
Well, if it's not possible to do it on 1 train, there should be special trains. I mean, it's just, to me, if men can't treat women properly and women feel unsafe, then that's a bad way. And people should treat all people better. Because live and let live is the best way.
Trevor, I mean, ideally we do get into a situation where both genders are treating each other with respect. But I don't know about you, Paula, but I feel when I'm getting on a train late at night, I always go for a carriage where there was more men and women than if there was just 1 singular man. I don't think there's anything more uncomfortable for a woman than getting on a carriage where there is 1 singular man.
Absolutely. Or don't you look for the carriage that's closest to the train driver? I mean, and this is the thing, Storm. What you're doing is you're highlighting something that all women do. We plan our journeys in a way that men simply don't have to. We think about where we're going to stand. We think about where we're going to get off. We think about who's going to meet us. We think about, have we got enough battery on our phone to ensure that we can text the girlfriend or whoever we were with that we are home safely. That's something I'm going to have to teach my girls to do. It's not something that, generally speaking, as I understand it, Albie, that men do.
No, it's not. And it breaks my heart that that's the case. But ultimately, I just feel this solution is exacerbating the problem rather than solving it. OK,
I just want to get a quick call in. Dave from Yorkshire, what's your thoughts on women-only carriages?
I totally agree, but I need it as an additional carriage because I think overcrowding is one of the big issues at the moment. I've travelled on many journeys where it's been overcrowded. I've been stood next to a female within their actual personal space, and I felt awkward about that. And I think the overcrowding at the moment is a major problem. If you had a women-only carriage, it would be an additional carriage, so that you've got less overcrowding, less opportunity for people to commit these offences in these crowded places and the crowded carriages. I think also this talk of just driver-only trains, which is ridiculous. You need staff up and down. You need a presence. I just think that, you know, at the moment, when we're talking about women's safety and we're talking about women's safety on trains, it's because you're going to lose your staff. You've got overcrowding with opportunities for predators on these trains, and it just needs that sorting out, not just having a women-only carriage, but additional carriages to just reduce that crowding.
And Dave, you're not wrong. A lot of these instances are happening at peak hour when men are in close proximity to women. But let me reassure you, Dave, most women, I think all women understand when you're really close to them because there is no space, and you're really close to them for other reasons. There is just a different energy there, Dave. Yeah. But thank you very much. And actually, more staff on the trains means we can go back to Ian's idea of putting cameras on the staff on the trains, and then we might be able to prosecute people a bit quicker. People will think twice about their behaviour.